Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Gayle MacBride, and I'm joined by our dynamic duo of psychologists.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride, and joining me today is one of two people who keeps me on the regular from imploding and doing stupid stuff. Welcome, Dan Kessler.
Oh, well, and I will say thank you. My business partner is someone who tries to keep me from doing stupid stuff, but I don't listen. Hey, Gayle, what do you think about me running for office? I think
don't do it. You like your life.
Yeah, thank you for the advice not to do it. Fucking do it in any way.
Did it anyway. How'd that turn out?
So I will give you the feedback that your advice is sound even when not listened to. So I'm really interested to see whether we agree or disagree on this week's internet question. Michael, take us away.
Yeah, well, welcome both of you. And for any of the newbies out there, if you don't know what Am I the Asshole is, in short, someone posts a scenario online and says, who's the asshole here? And that's what hopefully Dr. Kessler and Dr. MacBride will help us determine. And we've de-identified the posts a bit to make them a little more discreet, but also if you're new, stick around through the end. We always have some kind of bonus conversation that's fun. But for now, neither Gayle nor Dan know what I'm going to ask them. They haven't seen the topic or been had their hand tipped to it or anything like that. So let's roll. This one is am I the asshole for not being excited when my stepdaughter announced she's pregnant?
Maybe.
Ooh. This can go so many directions.
Yeah, like if stepdaughter's 16, no, you're not going to be excited of it. But if stepdaughter's 29 and in a long-term happy relationship and have been trying to have kids and you're not excited, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah. So, or I could see a scenario where the step parent and the biological parent are trying to have kids and make family between the two of them, and they're experiencing some infertility issues, and said adult daughter is pregnant before them. That'd be really hard.
And then there are emotions. And our emotions sometimes like fuck up our responses, and then we're like, oh shit, I can't believe I responded to that emotion instead of out of the actual way I should have responded. And then we're like backpedaling like hell. Anyway, we should probably hear the story though.
Let's hear the facts.
I'll give you the rest of
scenario.
Please.
So this is what I have. I am 39-year-old female, and my partner is a 55-year-old male. We've been together for 11 years. He's currently on a travel assignment for work, so we're not in the same city. His daughter, 28-year-old female, called him yesterday and told him that she was pregnant. He was overjoyed and then called to tell me the news. The first words out of my mouth were, "What about her job and insurance?" I said those things because my mind immediately jumped to where or how she may need help. It was not my intent to imply that his daughter was incapable of taking care of a baby or supporting it. I am happy for her as long as she's happy, but my partner's upset that my response ruined what should have been one of the happiest moments of his life, as he never thought he would have grandchildren. He suggested I post here to get unbiased opinions on my reaction. So guys,
unbiased on the internet?
Unbiased.
I think that's your first mistake, is going to the internet from any semblance of
the internet. Yeah,
right.
It's always so calm and relaxed. The responses are always so rash. I mean, and I will say, I don't want to diss the internet and the internet forum, because often
they really come through on some of these responses. To be fair,
they have, and they frequently give us pause to think at the end, especially when we disagree with them. I have a hard, I mentioned this already, but we so often, our first response isn't always the response that we would give if we had time to think things through.
I think this is definitely interesting because she's responding to her husband and not the stepdaughter.
Right.
So I would love to have that magic wand that paused this in mid-action and then allowed the stepdaughter to share the news with stepmom, and to see if she was able to pull together the more excited response that I think the stepmom would have liked to have given. But that aside, I think this is not about the pregnant daughter. This is about missing the emotional response that she needed from her husband. It was an opportunity for connection that the stepmother missed, or the female partner missed with her husband, more than
Right.
a lack of excitement for the stepdaughter, if that makes
Right.
sense.
He was sitting back there going, I can't wait to tell my wife about my daughter being pregnant. She's going to be so excited. I'm so excited. I get to be a grandpa. And he called her up and told her, and she was like, oh, what about her job? And it must have been in the moment a real gut punch for him.
Oh, I'm sure, because then the next logical conclusion has to be then, because dad's so excited, that then somehow they are going to, I assume, fall to having to support the kid or financially support the mother and child, or it sounds like the stepmom really sort of internalized, like, what role do we need to play in this, and how hard is that going to be? And that's where it fell kind of flat.
Right. And it would have not have felt, it would have, like, she missed an opportunity to for him to feel connected and supported. And instead she ended up feeling like he ended up feeling, sounds like, really not cared for.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
and
And
not but, because we learned about and but in a previous episode. And listen to that episode, which was about, what was that about? We talked about and but a lot. That was a great one, I thought.
That was the Slurpee episode.
The Slurpee episode. So look back at our previous Slurpee episode. We talk a little bit about and but, and how bad but is and how great and is. And now I don't remember where I started, but
I got distracted in that too. I think that I'm gonna just go on a different tangent here. I think that the poster did what a lot of us do, which was anticipated a problem and immediately jumped into problem solving mode,
yes.
as opposed to slowing down the conversation. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to couples and families. You have to slow down the conversation first. We want to plow through. We want to give solutions. We're ecstatic when someone goes, oh, that's a great solution, I think I'll implement it. And we feel really defeated when they don't. But if we slow down, listen to the emotion, make sure that we've reflected and heard it right, that slowing creates that closeness. And then if there's a problem, and if our partner wants us to solve it, then present a potential solution. But sometimes even that is an ask. Hey, are you venting, or do you want my ideas for some solutions here? Partners need to sometimes be reminded that they are not being told this information to fix it. They're being told for that connection.
And we've certainly talked about that before, this idea of how critical it is to ask your partner what they need from you in the moment. I think I'm with him on feeling, I think he has every reason to feel hurt in the moment. And what a great opportunity to remember that sometimes in relationships, it's best if we can take Ted Lasso's advice and have a bit of a goldfish memory. Like, sometimes our partners do things that hurt, and afterwards they're like, oh,
yeah.
Like, I'm hoping that she looks back and goes, wow, that really was hurtful to you. And now I don't remember whether she recognized that this was hurtful and felt bad about it and tried to make amends, or whether she's like, no, this is very reasonable. And Michael, can you go, Gayle, Michael? Yeah. Because if she came back afterwards and was like, I am so sorry, honey. Like, I got stuck on the logistics and all of this, and I totally failed to connect with how incredibly exciting this is for you, and I'm really sorry. I'm down with that. I'm totally down with that. And he should, like, okay, I would encourage him to be like, you know what? She made a mistake. We make mistakes in relationships. On the other hand, if she'd like stuck to her guns and like, no, I was on target, then I'm like, this is not okay.
Or less helpful, which is, I'm sorry that was my response, but I was really worried about no bats.
Oh, wait, I've got a better one. I'm sorry if you felt that way.
Oh, gosh. No, that's not an apology.
I'm sorry that you felt that way when I said this very reasonable thing. I'm really sorry that you felt that the way you did. Like,
please strike that from any apology you ever give in the future. Just know it will land with an absolute clunk 100% of the time.
Yeah. And that little nugget was worth the price of admission right there. Never. Because it's the biggest unapology there is I'm
right.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna just put it on you. Your emotions are the problem. Moving
Right.
on.
It's right up there with, I'm sorry I upset you, but
But put a stick in your eye. Like that's how it feels.
yeah, yeah.
It's not.
You know,
It's not helpful.
this is one of those ones where I get the sense that feelings got hurt and people dug in.
And I think it's complicated, potentially, the story I tell myself, by this step relationship, right? Often there isn't that closeness between step parent and stepchild, and 11 years, and the daughter is 28, so that makes her 17 when stepmom comes into the picture. So they may not have that bonus mom, bonus child kind of bond, and
Right.
that lack of excitement in that maybe already potentially strained or limited relationship.
Yeah.
It just compounds. And honestly, sometimes, even though it's not our favoriteest thing, you respond with a big smile and verbal excitement because that's what the situation is called for. What I sort of reflected on is when someone tells you, is brave enough to share with you the name that they've picked out for their baby, especially unless you are one of the absolute inner sanctum people, your response is always, "Oh, that's amazing." You don't have to say whether you like it or not, but you give that verbal cue that you are excited and you think it's beautiful and creative and all of the things. It's not your job to judge.
What we don't get here is the history, and I'm not judging people. You get into a relationship with anyone you want of any age you want. It's that's your decision, and I'm not judging here at all. And at the same time, I think about the dynamic that sometimes happen when 17-year-old daughter meets 28-year-old stepmom, and dad is, I'm just trying to math this out real quickly, at the time 48, and daughter is closer in age to stepmom than stepmom is to dad, and sometimes that generates feelings, and I have to wonder what the back history is for this family.
Yeah.
Have they gotten along like we get along so great from the day we met, or is there some tension there and some, we don't get the whole, like, where is stepdaughter's mom in all this? Did mom, is it left like Brady Bunch where you don't actually know, although I think they did mention it in one episode, but you don't actually know what happened to the other parent, or was there a divorce? Was there a death? Was there feelings? There's a lot going on here that we don't get.
There is
in our office.
And we can make this about the pregnant daughter, but really the scenario is an encapsulated interaction between two people, a husband and a wife.
Yes.
And, so kind of luckily the daughter maybe didn't feel that directly. The husband is feeling just like he has experienced this miss in his partner. And I wonder about the circumstances under which he was laboring this belief that he was never going to be a grandfather, what that was sort of about, and why he sort of believed. I mean, it sounds like he really believed that and was really surprised and excited to learn that he was going to be a grandfather. And, practicalities aside, let's just celebrate the new life coming into the world as opposed to problem solve it. We have plenty of time later to problem solve. So I'm going to just sort of lead us toward this judgmental part of our conversation. I'm disappointed in the original poster's response. I'm not in the place where she's an asshole. I'm not even going to give her mildly dickish. But I would love to maybe hear in the comments, or if she's responded, that she owned the miss and took responsibility and made a relationship repair. That's what's going to be most important in terms of my overall judgment.
I totally agree with that, because the initial response, like we've all had those moments where either we disappointed on our partner who was waiting for some response back, or our partner disappointed us, and we just failed them. You come home and your partner's done a whole lot of things to like get, and then you come home and you're like, don't even notice them, or vice versa. Or you're expecting some really, like, wow, that's great, honey, and they're like, did you feed the cat? And these things happen all the time in relationships, so I'm not faulting that. I, like you, want to know, what did they do next to reconnect. And this happens all the time when we're working with couples, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I constantly remind people your partner is going to disappoint you, not because they're a disappointing person, but because we fail our partners. We just do. That's part of the human experience. Disappointment happens. And when we find out that we have let someone down, our job is to make that relationship repair, not to hold an unrealistic expectation that we'll never be disappointed by that person again. That's a really tall order and really impossible.
Right. It reminds me of that bit of research that I love about like the more rom-coms you watch, the less satisfied you are in your relationship because it creates this added unreasonable expectation that that our partner is always going to get it right and it's always going to like end in these magical moments. And sometimes like relationships are almost always hard and require maintenance and effort.
Well, they require a vulnerability because what happens here is this man is telling his wife about his excitement about being a grandfather. In his head, he already heard how the conversation with her was going to go, and she was going to be excited, and he was banking on an outcome that was outside of his control. And so the disappointment is that discrepancy between what I was hoping for, my expectation, and what happened in reality. And that disconnect is where we experience disappointment. So, he also needs to, they, I think, need to have a conversation about that gap between expectation and reality, and try to right size that. And just remember, you cannot control the response of someone else, right? I've got this beautiful gift for my mother-in-law. She's going to ooh and ah over it at a holiday time or at her birthday or something like that. That's an expectation out of your control, and you may feel extreme disappointment if that person doesn't respond the way you want them to.
And then we've seen this so often. People like dig in. My feelings are hurt. I am right. We get this sort of righteous indignance and get trapped in this place like I'm not going to give until my partner apologizes.
Right.
And once they're stuck there, it's so hard to dig out of that until someone sort of breaks the seal and says, you know what? This is what I should have done. And I didn't do it. I really screwed up there. And I could see either one of them doing that. Like, hey, honey, I shouldn't have made the assumption that you were being, like, I am sorry I got so hurt by your response. Or she could have said, hey, honey, I am sorry I did not respond with immediate excitement. I was, and there's an opportunity for both of them to sort of own that and set the stage for the other one to do the same.
And so you missed something here, Dan. I'm going to bring you back around to something you almost always say in this podcast. I know. The other Dr. MacBride he's got a face going. You can't see it on the video version of this, but he knows what I'm going to say. Do you know, Dan?
Yeah. Where's the conversation that occurs 6 minutes into the rom-com that would have solved the whole thing? That one? No,
but that's a good one too. Assume positive intent.
Oh yeah, there's that.
The husband, Michael knows.
Michael saw that coming.
He did.
There's a window into the MacBride relationship, perhaps.
It is. Like, we are very much often on that same line. And sometimes if I miss in my response or he misses in his response, I have to remind myself, and we have conversations. Let's assume positive intent here.
Right.
Didn't intend to, fuck with your excitement about being a grandfather. That's not what this woman set out to do. She made a mistake, and his butthurt feelings may come from this assumption that she was not excited enough or gonna poo-poo on this whole thing, as opposed to he could have assumed positive intent out of that response. She is already, problem solving and thinking about what life is going to look like to bring this baby into the family and bring it into the fold and really bond them closer. And that would be positive intent. And a miss of the power of and it was still a miss on her point, on her perspective of that response.
Shout out to John and Julie Gottman for this, but that assuming positive intent is so critical in relationships. And I will admit that I make that mistake sometimes, and then I'm like kicking myself, like my partner was like, I assumed negative intent there when my partner, if I'd assumed positive intent, that would have like resolved it from the get-go. And you're absolutely right. And I can't believe I totally missed that.
I am so surprised, because you are usually the one man with that assumed positive intent. Like, you have banged it into mine and our listeners' head with good reason. It is rule number one.
Oh, if there's assuming positive intent has such a critical nature in all relationships. And when we're in a negative space, and who knows, like so many things can cause us to go the wrong way. Let's say, he's gone. They haven't talked in a while. She's looking forward. We don't know what's going on in each of their worlds in that moment that caused her to not go to a joyous place and him to not go to, wait, can we just be happy for a moment here? And her to go, oh shit. Oh, I'm so sorry, honey. Yes, let's be happy. Like something kept them from doing that. That's an opportunity. And you mentioned this word earlier. What an opportunity for repair. And we can pause at any point in our conflict with our partner and or coworker or friend or family member. We can pause at any point and go, whoa, and effect some repair.
Yes.
And they missed the chance here.
Yes, they did.
And he was, it sounds like he was like, going back to the original, going to the post, it sounds like he was like, honey, you don't get it. Hey, post this on the internet, because he's hoping that the internet like says what we're saying, which is, you know what, you're not terrible, but like, here's a chance for repair that you're not taking. Like that's what I'm thinking he's thinking. Like I'm projecting onto him that he's thinking.
Assume positive intent, right? If I can't make this point, maybe someone else outside of this can help you see my perspective.
Right. And it's not from a place of meanness, like I'll show you I'm wrong, but more a place of like, if you can help develop this insight, maybe like it'll help resolve the conflict.
So is now a good time to tell you what the internet said?
Yes, please.
Oh, have we rendered judgment? Gayle, have we rendered judgment on this?
I was withholding a little bit of judgment because I wanted to know if she made that repair attempt, that taking responsibility. So that's where I had asked Michael to look at that, and then we went on a whole tangent. But let's bring it back around. Michael, can you fill in that bit of information? Did she?
I can, and
respond?
she actually did follow up and kind of circle back around and give resolution, which we don't always get in these, which is part of why I like this one. Because you're right. I mean, I think the comments and her follow-up are the things that kind of make this. So she went through and answered a bunch of questions. She said, obviously there's a lot more history that she didn't include because she didn't feel like it was relevant. She works in healthcare, as does her husband, which is part of why healthcare and benefits were important to her, and she was thinking about it. But she said, ultimately, I should have shared in his joy and then waited to see if my help was needed or wanted. I reached out to my stepdaughter and in full transparency told her about my initial reaction, and we had a great conversation about it. She has forgiven me. I also apologize to my partner, who has forgiven me as well. I'll take what I've learned, and thank you for all your comments. I'm fine being called an asshole. I'm okay with that. And I will apply it to not be such an asshole in the future. Thank you for your replies.
Okay.
I like her.
I like her, happy. But here, this is great. Anyone who's willing to show up and say, I'm fine being called an asshole, by definition is not an asshole.
Right, exactly.
Because only assholes don't realize that they're assholes. And people who are trying to do the best they can, they're not assholes. They make mistakes because we're human. Oh, her answer solidifies it. Not asshole. This was a sucky moment. I love that she owned it. This was beautiful.
This is, and I'm hoping that I'm really hoping that her husband was able to take a breath here and go, thank you, honey, and be completely like, this is where you completely forgive and you say, yes, I get that happens sometimes, but what an absolutely beautiful answer. I totally love her willingness to and not fall on her sword, because that implies like, but to really just say, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm owning this mistake. I screwed up. And then to call the stepdaughter up and to be so transparent with it.
That's cool.
She's absolutely, she made a mistake. 100% she made a mistake, but she is absolutely not an asshole. I'm at the judgment of no assholes here, unless husband continued to be like, no, you shouldn't, and if he hung on to it and didn't accept it, then I'm going to give him an assholeness here. But right now I got no assholes here. And I think in the end, she handled it beautifully.
Yeah, I don't think this family has that vibe of holding grudges and pointing it out and bring over. So I think I agree. Really, no assholes here. There was a sucky moment, and what a beautiful way to embrace that and embrace change. And note that she's going to use this going forward in the future. I'm gonna do better. I'm not going to jump to that problem solving until you ask me. Oh, Love
And
it.
that's what's so critical in our relationships. Like this idea that we're gonna screw up, we're gonna make mistakes in our relationships. It isn't so much the mistake, but what we do after the mistake that governs whether the relationship is going to be strong or not strong.
Mhm.
I say I totally agree with you guys. And part of I think what you don't understand or what you may not know from because you didn't read any of the comments is that the internet gave it to her. I mean, she was called an asshole repeatedly
Really?
and like harshly, and people made weird assumptions about like that her husband was a sugar daddy and there's only this 11-year age gap and like some really
No.
mean non-constructive things were shared.
Oh,
But
that's awful.
the one question that came up repeatedly was like, what a weird response. Like she's 28. Why did you react that way? And so like a
I,
lot of people cued in on just that oddness and how I think maybe the surprise kind of drove her to the problem solving part of things.
yeah,
So
I think now there's an asshole here. I think the asshole here is the internet in this
Yeah.
case. No, because like so often we so like we have this initial response that if we thought about we would never have.
And I think the internet response here really is neglecting to remember how financially draining having a baby is, from the prenatal care to the hospital bills, the time away from work. I mean, this is not
Right.
an impractical concern. And we don't have the same kind of job security and maternity and paternity, parental time after a child joins the family that other countries do. So not
Mhm.
only are we in a drain, we are in a race to get back to right that ship. I understand the
I,
question and the concern about how do you afford this at 28? You probably don't have the same nest egg.
I
Internet, you
completely
got it
understand.
wrong.
I completely understand her immediate concern. I completely understand that she feels terrible about making the mistake, but I totally understand her immediate like snap response that was out of line and wrong. Um, I also like let's assume positive intent across the board. Why would we? Yes, there's an age gap here. Okay, and I why do we judge other people's choices in relationships?
Yeah, if you don't want an 11-year age gap, or what's the age gap? I don't remember. In
It
a
looks like
relationship, 15
yeah,
years?
15, 16 years between the couple and 11 years between the original poster and her stepdaughter. Like, yeah,
So
but
at the end of the day, if you don't think that a 15-year age gap in a marriage relationship is appropriate, then here's a suggestion. Don't marry someone 15 years your senior or junior.
exactly.
That's easy. Stay out of other people's marriages. If it works
Right.
for them and if they have found a happy life together, leave it alone.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it yeah, that bothers me, and we're constantly hounding. Although I failed today, how this like assume positive intent, but yeah, why would we automatically assume that he's a sugar daddy? Why would we? They're both in healthcare. They may be very equivalent everything across the board,
Well,
and just
not only
yeah,
that, I mean, he's posted somewhere else outside of his usual home. So it may be that he is doing, state or other government level work, which doesn't make money hand over fist.
yeah.
I don't think this
Who
guy's a
knows?
sugar daddy at all. I think the likelihood of that is very low.
Yeah, I'm it. Let's all assume positive intent here. So
Okay.
so yeah, the internet. I'm not happy with the internet shitting all over her.
Nope.
I'm happy with the internet saying, "Hey, you screwed up,"
Mhm.
but I'm not happy with them calling her an
Well,
asshole.
yes.
I did have to fish to find a couple other people. So there was one that said no assholes here. It wasn't a great response, but it seems like your brain randomly jumped to logistics mode. But I don't think that makes you an asshole, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that responded that like, nope, you're not responded or you're not required to fall over in joy because somebody else is happy. Just reminding that you're entitled to your reaction, whatever it is, I suppose.
Mhm.
But anyway, but yeah,
Okay.
well, thank you both for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, morality is often shades of gray and not just black or white.
truth is stranger than fiction. In this case, boy, the internet really responded in a strange way.
Yeah. Not entirely unpredictably, but but I again, no disrespect to those on the internet, but we'd invite them to assume positive intent.
Indeed. And we invite you to tell us where we got it wrong if you want to write into the mailbag.
We have a mailbag and you can write it. And here's the thing about our mailbag. We've announced this previously. You can write in and tell us that we were wrong. You can even call us assholes if you want. And you can write in if you've got a question that you'd like us to poke around at. We'd be happy to answer your questions or answer your, am I the asshole?
Absolutely. Please follow and share Veritas Views on any of the podcast platforms to your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits for the bonus conversation. And like Dan said, absolutely, drop us a line in the mailbag. I'll make sure to include the link in the show notes.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael MacBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. MacBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
Okay, so I would like to kick off the bonus conversation with a mailbag question. So we announced our mailbag and we've gotten some traction and some action in there. So I appreciate those who have written in. And the one I wanted to go back to today was a question from earlier in our podcasts. And so I really appreciate this. I think as a longtime listener, of course, by design, these are anonymous, so we don't actually know who it is that wrote this in, but the response simply says, I'm going to pull it up here. So the mailbag question that we got that I wanted to maybe take a moment and address is, what happened to you talking about the things in your offices? I thought that was interesting. I'm so glad. First of all, thank you for finding that interesting. You know, we kind of hit on this idea of sharing what was in our offices. And I think after a while, you're just like, you sit there and go, well, what's interesting in my office? So I'm glad that you enjoyed those. That was kind of a quirky kind of conversation. Dan, what do you think? What happened to those conversations? What's your take on why we stopped doing them? Because we sort
of ran out of quirky, unusual things to discuss. And we tried to do in the spirit of that original is give you a little bit of a window into, like, as therapists, we're taught, and I think Gayle and I may be more disclosing, though that I know I can be a bit more disclosing, that as therapists that we're frequently trained to, like, show nothing of ourselves. And I think therapists could take that too far, but certainly I don't talk about my personal issues, problems, marriage, and so forth in the therapy office, because that would be kind of crossing a boundary. And this gives us an opportunity to shine some light onto some things that maybe people don't know about their therapist. So we've been trying to use the spirit of that to answer our listeners' question, but we're always happy to answer questions about shit we have in our office.
Well, I was going to say, you know, we are on video for at least the YouTube version of this. So if you see something behind us and you have a question, feel free, write into the mailbag and say, what's that thing on, you know, what's
that thing on your shelf behind you? Yeah. What's going on? What are the elements? So we're like, this is an opportunity for us to share a little bit more personally things than we might in our work as therapists.
Yeah.
So ask away.
Thanks.
And I'll add, like, for me, I always enjoy that aspect, especially since the private practice is a telehealth one. You know, it's hard to see what that physical space is, and so it's a nice way to connect that way as well. But Yeah, but thanks everyone for tuning in. See you again next week for another new Am I the Asshole debate. Bye.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.